All right, I just want to jump right in here, and I know that we've all talked many times and in the book about like your history and how you got here and how this got started, but how old were you the first time you ever had an experience of getting something other than from someone who was actually physically here?
I would say 6 years old. I had gotten into trouble and was sent to my room, and all of a sudden a woman appeared in the room. So I must have been maybe 6 and a quarter, something like that. And she introduced herself as my mother's grandmother, which would have been my great-grandmother, who had been dead for, I guess, like 20, 25 years.
Yeah.
And she proceeded to tell me that don't listen to your mother because your mother did a lot worse things and that you shouldn't be punished. And I marched myself right out of the room.
Yeah.
And I said, your grandmother, Mary, said this, 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 and this.
Yeah.
My mother looked at me and went to whack me and said, go back in the room. I don't know where you got that from.
Oh my God.
So I kind of freaked,
yeah.
You know.
So was it something, because I've heard about, people who have this particular gift that get really frightened by it. And then they just don't want to know anything about it, they don't want to hear anything about it, and either they walk away completely or they shut it down, or it continues to like haunt them.
It was an ongoing thing. I think I remember at night when it would get dark, I would pull the covers over my head because I would have things pulling on my covers. So it's kind of, not having the memories and stuff, and then hearing footsteps and hearing different things. So, I mean, at that time, being a little kid, you just pulled the blanket over.
Were you scared?
Petrified would have been probably a better word.
And at what point did you start to go, this isn't so bad?
Well, I had a friend that I was very close with. It must have been just probably a few days past my 7th birthday, and I used to fish with him. And we used to fish like across the street from where I lived.
Yeah.
And one particular night, I came home early because I had to be home earlier, and he got hit by a car. And that night, which was probably about 10:15, 10:30, he appeared in the room, and I said to my mother, Timmy's dead. And that was before we had heard anything. And he had gotten hit on Moffett Boulevard or Union Boulevard and got dragged across the street. So it was just, that was like the first person that I would have said to you that I knew. And that's like how it started. So
wow.
it was pretty heavy duty at that time because I kept arguing with my mother that he was dead. My mother kept saying, no, he's fine. And I said to my mother, call, and my mother's like, well, no, it's too late. He's probably sleeping, the whole bit. In the meantime, the next morning is when we found out.
Holy smokes. Now, shifting to something that's a little lighter, I remember you saying that this came really to your advantage in like high school and college.
Yes, when it came to women, it absolutely helped my frat brothers in college to go home with women, because I would hook them up, but I would go home by myself. Because I would walk over and say, your boyfriend's cheating on you. You should really go with James right now, because James is a much better hookup, and James won't cheat on you.
Wow. Do you find, did you see the comedians in Cars with Coffee, Jerry Seinfeld and President Obama?
No, I didn't see that.
Very interesting. But one of the things that Jerry Seinfeld said to Obama was, do you find that because of who you are, people like present a different version of themselves? And I think, do you have some of that everybody is maybe they come to you a little bit differently because they want something from you? No,
because I would say the majority of people that I'm friends with.
Yeah.
And then they respect what I do, and then usually, I try to usually low key if I'm out socially. I'll always run across somebody will hear my voice and say, oh, you're that guy on Walk,
right.
Or I've seen you on TV. I had it when we had just come back. I was on vacation. We were in Disney World of all places, and I'm walking through the airport, and a woman turned around. She's like, "Oh my God, you're Jeffrey Wands," just by the voice. So, you get stuff like that. But I would say I approach everybody the same way. I'm not like.
Well, no, not so much for you, but for other people, how they respond to you. Do you feel like,
I think it's a mix. I mean, I think some people get totally intimidated and make people very uncomfortable because they must think that I'm reading their mind, but they would have to have a mind to read. So there's a difference. But I'm very low key. I mean, I kind of approach it the same way I do every day. Every day is the same day. I'm approachable. I mean, I think there will be always somebody, that will feel, oh my God, this is nonsense, or this is that. It's I've learned to just take everything in stride. You're going to believe what you want to believe, until you experience the experience.
When you talk to people, I mean, I know this doesn't happen all that often, but I'm sure there are times when you're like in line at the grocery store, you have a waitress come over, and you get some kind of a thing like.
Yeah, I try not to startle people, but I have done it.
Yeah.
I do find that a lot of times when I'm flying and I'm by myself, I get put next to somebody who usually have just lost somebody, so it makes very interesting airplane conversation. So I've had it maybe 4 or 5 times when I do fly JetBlue. That isn't a plug, but it's the idea of the fact that I get put next to somebody. It happens a lot.
It's like not coincidental. Do you believe in coincidence?
No.
Ever?
No. I think everything happens for a reason.
Are there answers to questions that you don't have, or are you pretty much privy to everything?
I think there's certain things I don't always understand why. If I don't see something happening, then I'm not supposed to see something happening. There are these random acts when something tragic happens or somebody's life is cut short and I'm not supposed to interfere, I'm not supposed to stop it. So it will vary. I would say that's probably the hardest thing that emotionally, you want to be perfect all the time. Or if I get close to somebody, it's a normal element with my emotions.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to see things because it's a friend or it's a family member.
Do you think that your emotions ever maybe like alter or interfere with whatever?
Oh, absolutely. It's the human element. I mean, I can want something to happen for somebody and it won't because I'm too close to it. I mean, I'm human, which people seem to forget. I mean, I'm actually an alien.
People seem to forget that.
I actually tease my sons believing when they were younger that I was an actual alien. Not an illegal alien, but, an alien from another world.
Space alien.
Yeah, and I had them convinced that, I was just here visiting.
Wow. Do either of the boys have any?
I think my younger son, I think everybody has it. I always tell people I hate that word because intuitiveness is a part of everyday life. You have a feeling, you talk about somebody, the phone rings, it's them. Right. It's all part of that. It's not coincidence, it's connection.
Well, your first book was dealt with how to tap into your own intuition.
Correct.
I found that, very helpful and very interesting. But I think that, I try to stay open to it, and I very rarely feel like I'm on the mark, and I don't know whether that's because I'm too much in my head.
You're too much in your head. Plus, I always tell people there's a fine line between neurosis and intuition, and you want to make sure that it's not your neurotic part that you're getting a feeling with, it's your intuition part.
And how do you know the difference?
Because it's deeper in the gut, where the higher part is, oh my God, oh my God, it's an upper level thing in the upper GI.
Interesting.
The bottom pit of the stomach is the thing that you'll always feel. You'll always know you're true to that feeling, you're true to that sensitivity. And
people sometimes get those feelings, but talk themselves out of it.
Oh, 100%, because they're afraid of it. They usually attribute it. Like I would say to you, 90% of the time people will write me or contact me and say, every time I get an intuition or I get a feeling that something bad's going to happen. So they attribute those feelings only to negative. Okay. They never attribute it to anything that's positive.
Right.
Because we're just honed into the negativity, so we expect the worst. So we're contemplating the worst.
Right. And for you, how do you know the difference between something that you want for someone and something that's like outside of you, that's like passing through you?
Well, usually, I'll give you a perfect example. I was out to dinner 3 nights ago, and in the middle of dinner, I felt like I was going to pass out, which it doesn't happen a lot. And what ended up happening was the woman behind me had just lost her son in a tragic car accident. So I was like feeling the impact the whole bit. So it didn't really go over real good with steak and mashed potatoes and the whole bit. But I had to like stop myself from really getting up and walking over to the table. Oh. So it's like, it was just bizarre because I've never had it like that. It was just like coming in waves. I could feel his pain. I could feel the element of the way he passed and, the tragedy part of it because it was a drunk driver.
But you didn't go to her?
No, I actually ended up hearing conversation where she was just talking about her son. It was just her son's anniversary.
What I have seen happen and what I have heard happen any number of times is when you give somebody information or a message, it absolutely, from that moment on, they are never the same. It completely changes their lives. Or maybe to a lesser extent, it dramatically changes how they perceive things. I mean, for a lot of people, especially those people who are on the fence about whether they believe that this, there's anything beyond life or not, to see that happen. But I think like, how do you determine in that particular case, this was a woman who was probably really grieving, and it might have made a big difference to
Well,
her,
it's a
but-
privacy factor. I mean, I was out for a reason. It was my wife's birthday. So I was like, I try to not do that. I don't like startling people. I will tell you, I've been in grocery stores and I've gotten messages where I'm standing, and I kind of do it in a subtle way. I kind of do it in a funny way because you want to try to make it at ease with people. I mean, it's hard. I mean, there are so many people with so many tragedies, or so every loss is as significant as the next.
Right.
It doesn't matter if you died in a car accident, you died, you know, from cancer. Everybody suffers in their own aspect with loss. I think the whole purpose of what I do is bridging that gap and helping people mourn. And I tell people you have to go through a normal grief process to get to a point to accept the death. And a lot of times people are in denial because they feel like, why wasn't I in the hospital room when mom passed away? Why wasn't I standing there when all this took place? And I always tell people, dead people pick their time. It's not us picking their time. They pick their time.
I've also heard you a lot of times, you know, tell people like it's okay. You know, they know you were there. They know you were thinking.
Well,
of
it's
them,
just
or they
because
know you-
usually in those situations, if the person is unconscious, they do have a recall before they passed where they hear the voices or they hear stuff going on. So it would be their way of really letting you know, hey, I heard you say I love you. I heard you say goodbye. It's all interconnected.
And there's times too, right, where the spirit actually leaves the body before the body completely stops.
Yes, there has been cases where a person will stand outside their body and watch the person being worked on before they pass.
And there's a name for that. Oh, astral projection.
Astral
That's
projection
not
and
dealing
also
with-
outer and
yeah.
also outer body.
Outer
experience.
body. Have you ever had anything like that?
I've had outer body experiences. There's a thing called the Psychomanteum. It's based on a book by Raymond Moody called Life After Life. And I got the honor of going to his house in Alabama. It's a good field trip. And he's in an old mill, and he set up a Psychomanteum. And Psychomanteum is basically what the Greeks did, where they create a mirror effect, and it's called mirror gazing. And you go into, what the Greeks did, or the Romans did, you would actually go into the tomb where the dead person was. And you would sit and you would mirror gaze to wait for a message. Now they brought wine, they brought olives, so I'm telling you, they probably had a great party.
Yeah.
But they would wait. So what Dr. Moody did is he created a chamber. You go in like a closet, and there's a tall mirror, and you do the mirror gazing. And behind the mirror is a light. And I actually had an experience when I was doing that I actually went out of my body, and I was like going all the way, you know, across. And then at the last minute when he came back in, I kind of yoked right back in, 1, 2, 3. So I mean, you can do that. That's what transmeditation is about. There's different forms of this.
And you said you meditate every day.
Yes, on a regular basis.
And is there a specific time or just?
No, usually before I start working, people start lining up. Usually when we do the radio, I usually can tell who's going to go to who.
On the way in, when you're driving in the car, on the way to
Yes, I'm not always listening to you guys in the morning, but usually I'll just turn the radio off. It's probably not the smartest thing to do because, you know, I could probably get distracted, but usually I find it to be, I'm in that state, I'm relaxed, and I'm starting to, you know, people are starting to gather.
How do you think it is that these spirits know that they're going to have an opportunity?
Well, I think that it's kind of like the movie Ghost.
Yeah.
When Whoopi Goldberg is, you know,
What a great
standing with the
scene.
couch,
That's such a great
standing
scene.
with the with the couch, and they're lined up, and they're all ready to talk. They just know. I don't think it's so much that they're gravitating to me; they're gravitating to the family, or
Yeah.
they're gravitating to the family members because they want that connection.
Okay, and maybe that family member is thinking that maybe they can try to contact you, and
Yes,
that's like,
and that's usually what ends up happening if you're meant to get through.
Yeah.
I find it to be people get
Well,
very
that's
frustrated
true.
about the radio because they're like, oh my God, you know, we blow the lines up when we do the show, and they get frustrated. If your family is meant to get through, they're going to get through at that time.
like the woman who called today and got disconnected, and what were the odds of her ever being able to get
Agreed.
through?
Well,
And she got
that was
through
Mark
that.
Daniels' fault.
That was
That was all Mark's
not that
fault.
her getting reconnected though. That was
No,
like that was a
but
big
that's phone stuff. I mean, unfortunately, you're going to get that. That is electronics, and dead people sometimes like to play with electronics.
Well, that's true.
Yes.
Electronics like lights and radio
Yes,
waves.
thank
right?
God nothing is working. Everything is working with the camera and the light.
And the last time I went to see Jeffrey, I brought a whole thing to like record. Actually, I brought 2 different ways to record, and neither of them would work. And he kept going, "It's not going to work," which is so unfair.
Well, it's usually what ends up happening is that people will block because they get so excited. And it's energy, and I try to explain to people, think of it as the light. you need the energy to make the light work, and they're doing it in that way, and they're doing it, and they're finding a way, and they kind of overload the power.
Interesting. And there's also coins.
Yes. Well, pennies from heaven.
Pennies and dimes.
Yes, and I always tell people you need to tell your relatives dimes, pennies, nickels, and quarters don't count. We want the $100 bills, the $50 bills, and the $20 bills, and that's really what you need.
Is there another element that's more easily manipulated?
Songs. Yes. You know, or when you are listening to a particular song, and this song comes on 40 times a day, and this song has that meaning. I've had it with clients. I had a heart surgeon who lost his daughter, and Calling All Angels used to come on, like, you know, every time he got in the car. I mean, that's not coincidence. So you got to remember, surgeons are God, and they have a hard time accepting something that exists outside the body, and they were able to do that. License plates? I've seen it where you get the same license plate in front of you. I've had people where perfect example, I had a woman who lost her son in 9/11, and she was in the city on the anniversary, and her son's name was Greg, and a gentleman walked up and started talking to her and said, "Hello, my name's Greg."
Oh my God.
Just at the precise time that the towers went down. So I mean, those things, I really do believe, people believe with birds. I always, you know.
I heard cardinals in particular are very.
Well, cardinals are good. I mean, you can get doves, you can get different things. So I think that it isn't necessarily just one species of bird.
Wow.
You know, you probably don't want a raven, but that's not a good thing, because ravens are attributed usually with death, or a blackbird.
Yeah. What's the downside to all of this for you?
When you see things about people that you don't want to really say, like I've sat with people I know that are going to die, and do you really want to say that? You know, you learn to filter things.
How do you handle that?
Well, I try to tell people, you know,
not like them.
Well, I've had it where I sat with somebody and I know they're going to have a health issue. I'm not a doctor. I don't claim to be a doctor, but I will say to them, go get this checked. Now, I've had instances where they don't listen, and sure enough, you know, it's a massive heart attack. It's that. So, you know, sometimes when it's your time, and you're not going to get away from that.
Do you have any, or do you think about, like, why you?
No, I think we
just
all,
like whatever.
No, I think I've been very nonchalant with it. I think we all have it. I challenge myself every day because I'm a skeptic in myself. And you know what? We're in the time of social media now. I get people that attack me. You know, they're going to say you're a fraud, you're this. And it's like, I'm so over that now. Like, I'm at a point with people, if you've had the experience with me and you've actually got to experience me doing what I'm doing, believe what you want. You know, everybody's going to be a skeptic. Everybody has an opinion. It is what it is. And when you have a personal experience, the personal experience, I think, is the more important thing.
And aside from, well, I suppose like the biggest thing has to be like how much help you can be to so many people. But on a personal level, like, is there something else about this that's particularly satisfying?
I think when you run into people and people will say to you, you know what, like what you said before, you helped me, or you helped me get closure, and you really made a difference. Because, you know, people carry guilt, people carry different things. I mean, I would say the hardest part of this sometimes is you want to do so much, and then there's just not enough time to do it. And I think like what the radio has been really good for me is that people that normally won't be able to afford, or, you know, are able to come and see me, can get me on the phone.
Sure.
And that makes a difference. So it's kind of, for me, like my community service.
Yeah. Now there's like the healing, which we've talked about, and also there's, I mean, for me, I've always been particularly interested in sort of like the guidepost, like what's coming up that I should, you know, look towards or look away from, you know, sort of the roadmap, and I find that's like particularly useful.
Well, the roadmap is always helpful. Sometimes there can be little hitches in the roadmap, but most of the time, if you have an idea, you know, not to take a job or not to do a certain thing, that does help.
Yeah. And now you've got 6 books, 3 hardcover books.
Yes, 3 hardcover books. I have a book in Taiwanese, a book in Chinese, a book in Portuguese, a book in Spanish. So I have The Psychic in You, Another Door Opens, Knock and the Door Opens, you know, Guide to 6 Keys to Living Your Life. I have a dream book. I have a grief book, and I have New York State's Most Haunted, which they are download books. You can get them on Amazon.
On Amazon.
There you go.
Tell me about the dream book a little bit. Tell me about
Dream book is just symbolism. One of the classic signs with people is people will call me up and say, I had this dream about my teeth falling out. Doesn't mean you need a dentist. It means usually that there's going to be a death, or there's going to be some sort of sickness in the family.
Yeah.
So it's all different. I would recommend, if you have, since we were talking about Powerball today, if you, I've had 3 winners in Mega Millions, and they've all had the same dream.
Did they won?
Yes, they won, and 2 women were in bikinis. in a snowstorm. And then the gentleman from Staten Island that won was in a Speedo. And if you saw him in a Speedo...
So wait, if you have a dream that you're in a bathing suit, then play the lottery?
Yeah, if it's snowing. Because you're in the middle of a snowstorm, and that would be something. And this guy was in a Speedo, and God forbid you don't want to see him in a Speedo.
I don't ever want to see anybody.
60-year-old
pretty
man.
much. Anyway, listen, I know you have other things
Yeah.
to do and people to see and all that important stuff, but thank you so much. It's
Thank
been so
you.
much fun.
My pleasure.
Always so interesting.
Always a pleasure. Perfect. Thank you, Joe.